There are a fair number of pervasive stereotypes of African Americans in pop culture, going all the way back to kind of slavery days. You get the mammy stereotype, usually an overweight, very dark-skinned, desexed black woman with a handkerchief on her head who's taking care of white families and not really paying much attention to her own family. I'll start with the black female stereotypes. So you get the Jezebel, who's kind of the opposite of that, this oversexed black woman who's just, you know, salacious and doing all the things that the proper white woman would not do in that particular time. You get the coon, who's kind of more of a black male stereotype, who's kind of the Amos and Andy, the jester, someone who's not very articulate, shouldn't be taken very seriously. Today you have the angry black woman, you know, a black woman who's just angry about everything, and her anger doesn't really have basis in anything in reality. You have the Sapphire, who's kind of the beginning of that. She's actually named for a character on the show Amos and Andy, which was the first television show to feature an all-black cast, and she was very emasculating toward her husband Kingfish. She was very loud and obnoxious and not very supportive. Now you just have the black criminal, which is kind of all-encompassing. Just so if you exist in the world as usually a black man and you're over like 2 feet tall, you are considered a threat of some kind and should be shot on sight. So those are some of the main ones. Civil rights movement was huge. For example, like before this Black Power movement or Black Rights movement, and yes, our view of the Civil War was this kind of Magnolia myth. If you've ever seen Gone with the Wind, that was this idea that slavery was good for black people, and it wasn't, you know, terrible and horrible, and it wasn't torturous in any way, shape, or form. But after we had, you know, the Civil Rights movement, was like, no, slavery kind of sucked, and it was horrible, and we should not have that. Which actually would lead us to roots in the 1970s. And even before that, going to comic books, if you look at the X-Men, you know, when that was created, that was a direct response to the Civil Rights movement. And even in the first film, you know, they had this moment where, you know, Professor Xavier, who was supposed to be kind of the embodiment of Martin Luther King Jr., and Magneto is supposed to be more the embodiment of Malcolm X. You know, Ian McKellen's character even does a by any means necessary line at the beginning of the movie, because Bryan Singer, the director, was like, yeah, that's where these characters came from. We understood that, and we're gonna put that in the movie as a nice shout out that yes, we did read the comic books and we understood what the writers were going for.
Probably started collecting comics because I was watching the show The Flash on CW, and then that kind of like kick-started after reading like a bunch of old comics that I had gotten when I was younger. They've always interested me, I guess, like the thought of having someone like super and mundane, I guess, in the world that could always try to fix it, you know?
It's weird with comic books because, you know, you do have this superhero motif, you know, that's just in general. So you do have these characters that are supposed to be, you know, stronger than average people and supposed to have all of these great superpowers. And so you don't necessarily want to read, you know, conflate, you know, a black brute with a person that's supposed to be a superhero. But again, we can't necessarily get away from the history of how particularly black men have been shown in popular culture. Like Blade, for example, he's supposed to be this really strong, you know, part vampire person who doesn't take crap from anybody. And, you know, there is this scene in the first film where, you know, he's trying to rescue someone, and because he is embodying a black man, the police start shooting at him, and he yells back something that I will not say on camera, even though it is a really great line, because it's like, yeah, you're assuming that I'm doing something wrong because I'm a black man, when in actuality I'm trying to save you and save the, you know, everyone else in this scene. So it's not helpful.
I mean, with what's going on right now in the world, I mean, that's just something that needs to be addressed, like race and gender being discriminated against in like the workplace or in schooling. It's just something that's not right. Showing them too sexually, I guess, showing how women shouldn't act, showing how they can use sexual appeal to get what they want, showing, I guess, with like African Americans and stuff, and how they're like portrayed as being like the lower class and everything. But then if you look at some of the Green Lantern comics when Jon Stewart came around, they showed like how Detroit, he like shaped Detroit and made it better, and how he was improving
I don't think representation solves all the problems inherently. I think the best representation you can get is to do it yourself. That being said, well-meant attempts are always welcome. I think some people can draw in a way that makes gender representation almost obsolete, you know? So every character is a blob for the most part. They eliminate all the Adonis physiques and all that stuff. So I'd say yeah.
I feel like there still needs to be an editor there that says, hey, I mean, you should probably go back and redraw this a little bit better, because you got to think about the kids. You can't just think about, hey, I'm going to have a political stance here. You also got to think, oh, when this kid gets older, maybe that kid will start dressing like that. So it's something that they've always got to have in the back of their mind.
I think every artist should have free and complete control, if I'm honest. I don't like a lot of stuff, but that doesn't mean I want people to stop doing it, because if they did, it wouldn't be sincere. Aside from the obvious, like, Sambo stuff, it's like, there's like the character who's a joke. You know, they make the jokes, but the jokes are basically about them. And then there's like the character who is not joking at all, basically. So like all the thug characters, you know, once in a while you get a good character, but it's hard to find a line between a stereotype and just a white person who is painted black.
We have this myth that of progress, and this isn't just in pop culture, this is in history in general, that we are always on a forward trajectory, that we're always moving in a good direction. And that is so not the way that history or popular culture have gone. It seems like we're breaking out of that cycle in this decade, but who's to say that that won't happen again? Who knows where we're going to be, you know, 3 years, 4 years from now. But all you gotta do is cross your fingers and say, we hope it'll continue to get better, but you prepare for the worst and save your money.